This is Eileen Lentz. I'm running for Utah House 35, and I'm doing a little experiment here with the Google Hangout. Since I had to miss the 4th of July parade, I thought I would do this instead. And I might have some people join me and maybe not. So I'm going to be going until about 8 o'clock. So if you want to drop in and ask a question, you're welcome to do so. Just send me an email or give me a call and I will hook you up. To kind of give you an idea of what some of the things that I'm going to be working for, I'm going to take you to my page and or my website, and we'll talk through some of the issues. I might click on some other issues that I, you know, things that are in the news and things that other people have shared. Now let's see me. Let me adjust this a little bit so it's not cutting off my chin. Okay. I'm not a television celebrity, so please forgive my amateur attempts at making an interesting video, and hopefully you'll see something in here that sparks an idea of what I'm trying to accomplish. So let's go ahead and we'll go to my website, and let me share my screen with you so you can see what I'm doing. And let's go to screen share again now that I've got it up. Okay, here's my website, and these kind of tell some of the things that I'm really interested in and what I will work for. Education centered on the needs of a child with local control. I have really noticed the erosion of local control, particularly control of parents, that they're kind of losing their say. And unfortunately, so are our local teachers. They're being forced by centralized mandates, either from the federal government or even our state government, that really limit the possibilities for our children. When I was working at a local school district, I was very appalled the last in-service that I went to, that they talked 75% of the time about how they could avoid meeting the needs of the child rather than changing the system so that it meets more of the needs of the children, individual children particularly, because children are not cogs in a machine. They have individual needs, and different things work for different students. I am a special education teacher by trade, at least until I had to retire because of my disability and some disagreement that I had with the school district, particularly because they were more interested in fitting to their narrow perception of education rather than what the students really actually needed. And I don't fault the system. It was a broken system. The Utah education system is a broken system, and it's not centered on the child. It's not centered on providing the specific needs for what individual children need. Unfortunately, as I have discussed a lot of these things with different parents and teachers, I find more and more that they have to fight to get what their children need, even when those needs are documented as special needs. They've had to really struggle to get those needs met. And unfortunately, many teachers are not being strengthened in the right way to meet those needs. They're not being strengthened to work together with parents to solve the problems that are in education. It's centered on the needs of the administration and the control that is centralized, including up to centralized federal, which is basically against the Constitution, because it's a power that it was not given in the Constitution to rule over education, and they are doing so now illegally and not very effectively. There are some real weaknesses in what is going on for the education system, and so that's probably the number one reason why I am running, is to help fix the education system. I have taught at schools who did it right, and I've taught at schools who didn't, and I know how to fix it. And I hope that you will take a look at that. And while we're talking about that, I'm going to switch over to the issues, because in particular I talk about education, and I want to share with you a few ideas that I've gotten here. This one is Own Best Teacher, and what that is all about is that while I was teaching children, I noticed that they were not prepared when they came to school to learn. They didn't know how to learn. They had learned instead how not to learn, how to avoid learning. Particularly with students with special needs, they have dealt with a lot of failure in school, and so to protect themselves, they kind of build up this shell of misbehaviors and learned helplessness in order to avoid what they have been burned with before. And so they lose a lot of that motivation that maybe they had when they first went to school. And unfortunately, too many students are not being prepared before they come to school on how to learn, and what are some practices that will help them to do that. So I worked hard at developing programs that would teach children how to learn, not only while they were in my classroom, but as they moved on, that it would not matter who their teacher was, that they would have those skills that they could learn in any circumstance. And of course, children do not need to have more subjects to learn in school. What they need is to learn those things more efficiently. And so why not include teaching those skills on how to learn with skills that you are learning to read, and skills that you are learning to do math, skills that you are learning in social studies and history, science, all of them. You can build in instruction that includes learning how to learn. Now, first off, you have to teach students that they can learn. Particularly with special needs students, they have learned that they can't learn. And so we need to reteach them that yes, they can do it. And I used to do a little trick when I was teaching full-time. I would take a string and I would loop that string and put it around my neck and bring it out to the front. And then I would put the ends of the loop together and quickly take it right through my neck. And one of the little boys thought my head was going to fall off when I did that. But anyway, when I slowed it down and showed them the finger movements, you know, they were amazed that it was all an illusion. And if they knew the trick behind it and they could practice that trick, they could do it just like me. And they could wow their friends. And after they learned to do that, I said, learning is just like that. If you slow it down and you learn the trick behind education and learning, then you can do that yourself. And so we went through and we picked out one or two things every week that we would go over in detail in how they could learn more effectively. And we included stories that they could learn how to read, or stories that they could learn to do math using those techniques and those skills. And then we would keep building on that. So they were learning how to learn as well as how to read. Of course, one of the best ways to learn is to include your family in your learning. And so the stories that they were learning how to read that included these learning skills, we would send them home with them to read with their parents, read for their parents. And it had a little scale on the side that the parents could evaluate how fast they were reading, what words they got right, so that they were involved in it. And if their family did not speak English, we could send that story home in the language that the parents could read it with them, and thus learning how to speak English at the same time. And it was amazing how involving the parents with the educational thing is, and talking to them about these learning skills, as well as teaching them about moral issues like honesty and responsibility and caring, kindness. It made the person a more whole and full and balanced. And so they were having much more success in learning because they were enjoying it. They were they had hope, and they were learning the skills to be their own best teacher. And that is the type of thing that I would like to incorporate in our education system. And I know it works because I did it. I know it works because the school that I worked at before I came here did that. They did that sort of thing, and I was part of that, building how to do that. And we had a lot of success. There was a wonderful feeling in our school. We have teachers that teach there even though they could go other places and earn more money because they love the atmosphere of that school. Teachers were working together, collaborating with parents and the administration, and that was an important part of it because we were working as a team, not against each other, which I saw in Utah schools. There was not that same level of cooperation, and it broke my heart because I love Utah, and I want them to have the best schools in the nation, and we could, but we have to change the paradigm that we have in education, that it's teaching to the child's needs. The child is supreme in this idea, and their needs are the most important things. All other things should support and build that. And that goes to the next part, which is basically my mission statement for teachers, or for education. And you see here, mission to heal society. I'm not talking about a spiritual or that type of, well, in a way I am, but not a religious healing. I'm talking about the kind of healing where you solve problems and you fix things. That's the kind of healing I'm talking about here. And that is basically, this in a nutshell, is that it heals the child so that they feel whole, that they feel that they can do these things. And teachers are there teaching in a way that heals that child and makes them whole. And parents, as their child's own first teacher, are given tools to know how to support their child in the best possible way so that this child can reach his American dream. Not the American dream of the President of the United States, but the dream, American dream of that child, the American dream of that parent, the American dream of those teachers who are trying to teach those children to fulfill their dreams. And of course, they work together. That collaboration and that support of each other is so important. Parents and teachers should not be saying, oh, it's your fault that your child is not prepared to go, or it is your fault because you are not teaching the type of things that my child needs. We don't need enemies. We need to work together, and there is a way to do that. And so that is what my mission is to make that kind of system. The system that is in place now is not that kind of system, although I'm sure that there are some schools who are having that kind of success because they have that kind of goal in mind, but too many of them are not. Too many of them are in mega school districts who have lost touch with what students really need and what parents really need and what teachers really need. And here comes that next line, this administrators who administer in a way that heals In other words, they support their teachers and their parents in their effort to have the best possible learning environment for the child. And something that a lot of people are not that familiar with is an educational service that is independent of that school administration. When I taught in Pennsylvania, we had a group that was called the intermediate group, and they provided the training, they provided the this type of services that the small school districts could not provide. And they had all sorts of programs that were there to support families and support special needs children. And all of the school districts had access to that kind of support. Well, rather than having a government body do that, why not have a parent group that works as a clearinghouse for that? And different educational service businesses, publishers of teaching materials and textbooks, although I think we should phase out of textbooks because I think they kind of limit a lot of the education unless it's something that is standard, that is not growing. I think there are better ways using technology that we can make these things available that are created specifically for the needs of the students and the teachers and the parents that are using those materials. And of course they would do the training, and that would take away a lot of the need of the administration end of it, where we've got huge salaries and other things in the administration area that could be cut way down because the expense of all of those materials and whatever could be moved into the private sector, so that the administrators have more power to, well, I want to diminish the power of the administration. What I mean is they will have more freedom to actually go see what's going on in the classroom, so that they will be more in touch with what actually students need, because right now they're isolated from that. And of course government, churches, universities, and other community institutions, all of these can support education in a way that is nurturing and helping that child to find their American dream. And of course it's all based on moral principles like honesty, kindness, responsibility, hard work, all of those good, strong moral characters that build good, strong moral citizens. Citizens who know what's going on in the world around them, who know their responsibility as citizens and know their freedoms that they are given through the constitutions of our country and our state, and even the guiding principles of our local government bodies. So this is what we need to be preparing our students to do, not to feel a cog in a machine, to be the worker that a business owner needs. The kind of workers the business owner needs is not a robot. What they need is a worker who is full of character and honesty and determination, trustworthiness, that has those kind of characteristics in their lives, and that they are creative and full of the feeling of being an American, one who honors the law, one who is willing to sacrifice to fight for our nation's rights, someone who is willing to reach out to a neighbor and help them when they're in need. That's what our businesses need. They don't need cogs in a wheel. And that's what we need to be teaching our children. And the best way to teach our children that is if that's the kind of person we are ourselves. And of course, like I talked about here, the parents should be the primary adult who decides what is going on in our education. The government body has botched it up big time. And we need to put that power back into the hands of our parents, who love their children more than any other institution, any other person. They love their children and want them to be successful, unless they are a broken person who needs our help. But most parents that I have worked with, and I have worked with many of them, and many of them have been teachers or parents who I have been warned are problem parents. And I found that as I listened to those parents and did not condemn them for what they were asking, but listened to them, and then we would work together on how we were going to solve that problem. Those parents, the anger that they felt melted away, and when they saw that I was willing to help them to reach their dreams for their child in a constructive way, they were no longer problem parents. They were parents who were hard workers in trying to help their child. And we had a lot of success together. And I saw other teachers doing that with their parents as well. So I'm not saying it's all me. I'm saying that parents want teachers who love and care about their children and want them to succeed just as much as they do. But there is no one that loves the child more than the parents. And I feel that parents who are well informed should be the ones that are the governing body that control what's going on in our schools. And how are we going to do that? Well, I'm proposing, remember I mentioned the clearinghouse that that we would have. Let's move over to this thing here. And this is a service model for a parents organization who would be available for public schools, charter schools, special schools, private schools, home schools, as a clearinghouse for all of their needs. And they would be consumer advocates. They would advise the consumer, these people over here, what was available. And where would they get that information? Through outside service providers, educational training providers, curriculum publishers, educational technology providers, materials and equipment providers. These could all be outsourced, and they would be free to choose the best possible products that would meet the needs of their students. And the Utah Families for Educational Excellence and Responsibility is a name that I put on this group, which would be made up of parents, grandparents, who are willing to do the research and gather this information to help these different educational entities know where they could turn for the best possible resources for their child or their children or their students. And the proper role of government, definitely not what is there now. They're there to pass legislation that protects the rights of students and parents in education, particularly students with special needs or disabilities. They're there to pass legislation that provides fair and appropriate funding for education, which is free of mandates and requirements that are unconstitutional or deprive citizens of self-determination. They are there to pass laws that protect students and school personnel from harm by outside entities, including government entities or malicious individuals or groups. They are there to license professional educators and provide security clearances for personnel. They're there to repeal and remove or defund laws, regulations, or programs that are destructive to educational rights and opportunities for students, parents, and education. They're there, if they're the executive branch, should execute the laws that are passed by the legislature or Congress and remove non-legislative regulations that are to interfere with local control over curriculum, standards, testing, and educational services. And they need to make sure that constitutional and properly legislated laws is followed, protecting the rights and services required for students, parents, and educators. Here's a link to legislation by a representative that has been working on it this past year to give greater protection to student data. That has been another big thing that we've had a big red flag come up lately, is the gathering of our student data and sending it improperly to outside entities. The federal government has kind of tried to sneak a tricky one on parents by removing some of their parental control over their child's education, and particularly the data. Before, you had to have the parents' permission before they did that, and the federal government tried to mushy up the laws and regulations so that they could do that without informing the parents. And thank goodness some of our local legislators and people that knew what they were doing have tried to put some of that back so that Utah is not in as much danger as other states, but there is still that problem and that conflict with removing the parental rights. And we as parents and grandparents need to stand up and fight for the rights of our children and for their privacy, so that they can't be used for experiments like they did with the testing that went on this year. And we'll talk about that a little more later. But the idea is that the improper role of government in education, particularly the federal government, as I said before, they are not constitutionally allowed to have that kind of control over our education. And they have been usurping that power increasingly, and it needs to stop. But we also need to put some brakes on our state government and the state school board, that they are overreaching their constitutional power and taking that away from parents, and we need to put the parents back in charge. Those parental strength comes about because parents get involved. Parents learn what is going on in the schools, and parents go sit in on their child's classroom. Senator Osmond, in a meeting that I was in with him, he talked about how they put back in those laws that had been stripped, that parents can go in and sit in their child's classroom and to see what's going on, and they have some of those rights restored to them. So parents, you need to be taking advantage of that. You need to go in and see for yourself what's going on in the classroom. Not in a way that you are being belligerent or, quote, a troublemaker in the school, but in a way that is unintrusive to the education of others, but you see what is going on in the classroom. Have a conversation with your teacher about how you can help and how you can get involved in your child's education on a daily basis, not just once in a while when you have a parent-teacher conference. The kind of cooperation that I'm talking about is constant involvement and support of your child's education. And if you see something that really concerns you, that you're worried about, don't be afraid to talk to the teacher about it in a way that lets them know that you appreciate their caring and that you are trying to work with them rather than against them. My only caution here is that you need to realize that with Common Core, which is federally mandated, whether they admit that or not, Common Core, they say, was done by a group of governors, but that's not true. It was put together, and then governors were kind of forced into signing something that they didn't know what it was to begin with, and they were bribed with stimulus money to sign these agreements without knowing what they, in fact, they had to be signed before they were even put together, let alone, you know, gone over and studied and a good plan, they were given a deadline to where they had to agree to these things before they even knew what it was. Doesn't that sound familiar? Nancy Pelosi's famous line about Obamacare, we have to pass it to see what's in it. Well, that's kind of what happened with Common Core. And they still don't have all of it put together. So how can they say that it was created by the governors? It was created by a group, and then the governors had to agree to it. And as governors are seeing what is there, as the people are seeing what is there, they're beginning to say, no, this isn't such a good deal after all. And they're starting to move back away from Common Core, including in Utah, although Utah Core is, it still has a lot of the dangerous mandates in it that will create problems for teachers who want to teach to the needs of the student rather than the centralized government mandates. And so to give those teachers the best opportunity to show their expertise is to put that power back into the hands of teachers and parents rather than the government. So anyway, this is basically the primary reason why I am running, because this is so important. We need to have school boards that come directly from parents and from the truly vetted system, that we know what they stand for, that it's transparent what they stand for, and that they're not just yes man or a rubber stamp for what's going on in the district, because the district superintendent and the district staff should not be dictators. They should be people who are providing opportunities for their teachers to do a proper job of teaching the students. And all of the other support staff that are there should have that same sort of mission. So in other words, we want to put the superintendent in closer touch with those students so that they can support the teachers and the assistant teachers and the support staff that are in the school that interact directly with the students. Now down here, I said an effective educational structure would ensure that parents and teachers are empowered to make the primary decisions about what type of education their child, student is provided. And therefore the governing body for each appropriately sized district should be a school board chosen and representative of the parents and other local citizens of that district. And since the unique Utah caucus system provides the strongest support to vet the candidates sufficiently to ensure that candidates represent the values of the voters, the party system should be used to nominate the candidates. As a caucus participant, I am amazed at how much better I know the candidates than I ever did in any of the other places that I lived who do not have the caucus system. And I think that understanding of who those candidates are, the ability to make a wiser decision, not based on the ideas of a political action group or a political party, but on your own understanding of that candidate. That is where the true right to vote happens. You are not just a vote. You are a well-informed voter when we use the caucus system. And so I think that that's where we need to be electing our school boards, both on a local level and for the state school board, because we need to understand, they need to understand that they serve the students, they serve the parents, they serve the teachers. They do not serve the administration. And their purpose is to oversee the administration and make sure that they are properly meeting the needs of those students. Right now, that's not what is happening. We do have some very effective school board members who are really speaking out for the parents' rights and for the students' rights and the teachers' rights. But unfortunately, we have others who I would put in the category of yes men or yes women, who let things go to and they're led by the political the powers that be, the centralized powers that be, whether that is the superintendency, whether that is the governor, whether that is the President of the United States. We need to change that around so that the parents are in charge. And I include teachers because I feel like they're in a partnership that is really crucial for our students. Okay, and again down here, often I have seen in areas where the schools struggle, I have seen that parent-teacher organizations are not really that effective. They tend to be money raisers, fundraisers, groups, or even involving little clubs and different things like this. They're not really there to develop a close relationship between parents and teachers. And that's the kind of ideas that we need to change. We need to have parent and teacher organizations that take on more of the responsibility of having a good and proper education. And that kind of goes in for parent or for teachers unions and things like that too, because too often the unions are used for power grubbing, and I would even say that some unions steal the money of the teachers for their own political purposes. I did work in a school district where the union was very active in putting in some wonderful programs and systems in the education realm, rather than thinking about a lot of the money stuff. And I think that's where teachers unions need to think, is how are they going to make the learning environment better, rather than how much power they can get over education of our students. And their union bosses, their political power, you know, how much power they have over who gets elected. I'm not really interested in that kind of organization. I'm interested in an organization who is really has the same focus that we should be having, and that is the best possible educational environment for our students. Again, the students are what is primary. Here comes the next comment here, the size of an effective school district. I have yet to see a mega school district that is very effective. They might have some effective schools in their district, but that has more to do with a good principal and a good parent-teacher organization, of course, very good teachers, and a lot of collaboration going on within that group. When I came to Utah, I taught in a school that was not very effective, and I went to some trainings in a school district that was very effective, and you could literally feel the difference when you walked in that door. You could feel the love in the school that was doing it right. You could feel the chaos and confusion in the school that was not doing it right. And like I said, I worked in a wonderful school in Pennsylvania that was doing it right, was collaborating with the parents, teachers, the administration, and ultimately the students. And it was a wonderful place to work. So the most effective size, as far as I'm concerned, is a small school district where you can have the superintendent come into your classroom and read to your students. You can have discussions with your principal because he's been in your classroom. He has read your lesson plans. He knows what you're trying to accomplish, and he's there to support you, or she's there to support you in the efforts that you are moving forward with those students. And you cannot have that in a mega school district. There's too many layers between them. Okay. I'm having a problem here. Let's see what's going on here. All right. Okay, so the next thing that I would like to share with you is about resources and services. Oh, I didn't finish my thought here. I got a little distracted with an apparent problem with my computer. But anyway, the most effective size of a school district is one where you have one high school. It could be a good-sized high school, but when you get more than that, you're having to have separate buildings for administrative And the more that isolates the superintendent and his staff from the school district, or the schools that are in the district. And the more you increase the distance between the superintendent, the less effective that you will be. There is a lot of different departments that really isolate that superintendent and the person that is supposed to be in charge of what's going on in that district. When I was working as a teacher here in Utah, I never saw the superintendent. I talked to some of his, some of the vice superintendents, but they didn't really listen to what I was saying. They acted like they were listening. They would say things like, "I hear what you are saying," but there was never any follow-through. There was never any look at what was actually going on in my classroom. There was never a look at what was going on in that school that I was working in that had so many problems. And they would just pass it on to, you know, whoever they would, and it would never be followed through with. And I really think that it was part of that, how can we avoid meeting the needs of our students? It's by not going to see what those needs are. It's by ignoring the pleas from the teachers. And it's by ignoring what is going on with those teachers and those students. So the more you cut that down so that you can have an interaction with the administration, with the students and the teachers, so that they can actually see what is going on in your classroom. Throughout my teaching career, I had some absolutely wonderful superintendents and principals and department chairs of the, say for instance, the special education department, the curriculum department. But when you have all of that bureaucracy with districts that want to have everything that they need in a neat little package, you lose a lot of the opportunity that parents and teachers have to choose the best kind of programs that are out there. They've invested in this certain program with hiring managers and instructors for that specific program. They've invested in all of the money for the textbooks and the teaching materials and the contracts with the group to do testing and all of this other stuff, that it is overwhelming, and it really limits them to follow through with that program, because that's what they're invested in, rather than going to programs that really work. And say school A is having wonderful success at, but you can't use that because you've already contracted to do this other program. Well, let's put this out in the free market system where parents and teachers can choose the best product for that child. And if the people that are administrating that program, they find out, hey, this other program is doing much better, we better improve our program so that it has the same type of results that this other group does. The clearinghouse system would make that possible. So all of these jobs that are in mid-administrative, who I was appalled at how much money is spent on administration in Utah, and how much less is spent in the school districts that I worked in Pennsylvania. More of the percentage of the education could go to where it really was effective, rather than where it's just paying for a lot of bureaucracy that we don't need. So anyway, I think I got sidetracked there. The idea is that effective school districts are smaller school districts that are clean. They don't have all of this extra baggage, and they are free to choose the kind of resources to train their teachers and drive their school buses and you know, do all of the other different types of services that schools need, because they don't have to pay the whole thing. Businesses have other ways to make money, for instance, and so you're not paying for the whole thing. You're only paying for the part that you use, and it would really cut down on the expense of education. Okay, so let's go down to resources and services, and we've talked about this a little bit, but like I said before, we had an intermediate unit where we could go to get our training. Once I had my special education certification from the university, I extended it because I wanted to have more tools. I wanted to teach these students that didn't know how to read. Well, I was teaching the freshman or ninth grade class. I had older students than that, but that I taught, like some seniors, and several of them could not read at all, and they had gone through the whole school system, but they had never been able to learn how to read. And so I wanted more tools that I could teach more effectively. And the intermediate unit had a training for the Wilson Reading Program. Now they didn't necessarily own the Wilson training program, but they had people who had gone through the Wilson training system, or Wilson language system, so that they could train others how to use that system. And so that's what I did. I went back and got training so that I could be certified as a Wilson reading instructor. And the neat thing about the Wilson reading system is that it was started for adults who did not know how to read. And Barbara, and now I forget, well, Barbara Wilson, she developed a system that uses all different senses and uses a structured program to teach the syllable types, and it is very effective. I taught students who did not know how to read, how to use this, with how to read with the system. And one of the girls that I taught, she had survived all the way from first grade to ninth grade by having a partner who would read with her. And she told me, Mrs. Lentz, you need to teach those guys how to read. I can read better than they can. And she could. You know, it's a program that is very effective for people with learning disabilities. And I say people because it doesn't really matter what age you are. You can be 52, you can be 21, you can be 10 years old. And it is a very effective program to help you. The only caution they have is that when you're talking about students with a problem with English language, or someone who English is a second language for them, you need to do some different things to develop their oral language ability before you can really teach them how to read. And that was my experience too, because I had a young man who he and his family had been in the United States for a while, but his father didn't really speak English. And this young man kind of didn't know Spanish very well, and he didn't understand the words in English. So he was kind of caught in a limbo, and he really struggled even when I did this program with him, because he just didn't understand what the words meant. He was very intelligent, but he still struggled with learning because he just did not understand what the words meant, either in Spanish or in English. So we had to work with him more in oral language, and so that he would know what those words that he was reading. He could decode them, meaning that he knew the syllable types, he knew how to pronounce them, but he had no clue as to what they meant. And so even though he could decode okay, because he didn't understand the meaning of those words, it really was difficult to go as quickly as he would have otherwise. So it's important that you have different things in your toolbox that you can help people that have all of those needs. And the educational service business, or the intermediate unit, provided that kind of treatment for me. When I was a Head Start teacher, they provided some of the training for that when I was teaching Head Start. Although the Head Start program itself had built-in, and that's another program that I think is really top-heavy, because there's
These are clean.
there isn't enough autonomy for the teachers to really teach. They can't really make that many decisions. There's too many chiefs and not enough Indians, too many layers of who's in charge. And it's one of the reasons why I decided that I was going to go back to teaching regular school. At that time I was elementary certified, and then I went back to get my special education certification with my master's degree. But anyway, the idea is that this intermediate provided those type of services, and as well as a lot of services for students who had special needs that could not be met by the smaller school districts. That comes into another point. A man that had a daughter who was blind, and she also had some other learning issues. And we were talking about the size of school districts, and he said the only problem with a small school district is that I have fought so hard. Every year we have to have a threat of a court case in order to get the needs for our daughter. And he said, I don't, that's a battle I don't want to fight anymore. I want to keep what I have. And what I'm proposing would make it so that he wouldn't have to fight. He wouldn't, those resources would be available to him through that clearinghouse and through those service providers, that he wouldn't have to fight, because he could choose that for himself. He wouldn't have to go through the school district to say, okay, what are you going to provide for me? Because it would be right there for him and his wife and his child. So it would cut out a lot of that kind of court case struggling that is sometimes required to get the needs fulfilled. So let's see what I have written here. Parents and their children who have special needs have great fears about messing with the status quo. They might ask, what about all the services we desperately need? I have struggled so hard to get what we've got now. As discussed above, size of school district does not guarantee needed services will be provided. Our state is full of parents and teachers who have had to fight for years to get the needed services of their child or student, often being let down by the current system. In Pennsylvania, we had a system of intermediate units that provided additional services that the districts could not provide on their own. They had no power to dictate to the schools, but they provided the schools with additional options to meet students' needs and provide educators with certified training. District schools also shared resources and programs with each other. We had, for instance, we had a teacher in our school district who taught sign language, and none of the other schools in our group that had an agreement with each other had. And so she went online and taught that through the internet and through technology. And so, you know, those types of interactions between school districts would be great. A lot of online education could be made available in that way. Just over, well, yesterday, in fact, over the 4th, I was at a family reunion, and my cousin works at BYU Idaho, and he was talking about how BYU Idaho has really expanded their independent learning through the internet. And my brother-in-law, he has done a lot of instruction through the teaching. He was a police officer and sheriff and all of that, and he has his doctorate in criminal justice, and he did a lot of internet courses or independent learning courses. And so they were talking about that. It was kind of interesting. It's a very good alternative. I've taken some internet classes myself, and I wouldn't recommend that everybody do it, but if you are disciplined and you have the ability to learn that way, I think that's an excellent way of getting at least some of your coursework done through even secondary education, or then higher education as you move on, at least partially, and it's a lot cheaper alternative. But those are the type of things that could be put into the system that I am talking about. But like I said here, I am not proposing a copy of the Pennsylvania system because it was still run by the state government, and I don't want that kind of control. I want, in the government body, I want to see parents take over that. And that is something that we could do now. We don't have to wait till the legislature or whatever propose that kind of change in the system. We could have a not-for-profit or non-profit organization that is run by parents and grandparents. I have to include grandparents because that's where I am. And I'm very involved in education and want to have the best possible education for my grandchildren. And so on one of the other pages, I talk about why it's so important to have that family be the one that is in charge of that. And here's a possible name: Utah Families for Education Excellence and Responsibility could be established to provide the same function as the Pennsylvania Intermediate Unit System described above. The family governed organization could serve as a clearinghouse for free market service providers and provide consumer information about the quality of the products and services and any scientific evidence available. And they could even work with universities and colleges and other entities to do the kind of research to make sure that the programs that they are using really pass the scientific evidence that they do work. It's not just oh, this sounds fun or this sounds good, but they have the research to back that up. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't ever try new ideas. What I'm saying is that we should take the time to get them scientifically verified, and so that we could have evidence-based education rather than, well, this sounds good. And when things don't work, there was one program that I was teaching comprehension with. I'd kind of argued, and then when I say argued, I don't mean that we were angry with each other, but I kind of advocated that we have a program that teaches comprehension. I had some students who they could decode or figure out exactly what the word sounded like, but they had no clue as to what they were reading. Not just the little boy that was had the problem between Spanish and English, but I'm talking about people who spoke English. There was one girl that I had who she could she was very fluent in reading. I don't remember ever hearing her making a mistake when she was reading a word. But when you tried to ask her questions about what she read, she had no clue. And so, and I had a few others that were kind of almost as severe a difference. But anyway, I advocated for a comprehension program, and so we put one in place. But we found that it wasn't giving us the kind of results that we needed, and so we decided to change it out. And I do have some programs that I have found that do build more comprehension than that system did. So they are out there, but they need to be put together in a package that are specific to the needs of that student that you're teaching, because they do not all learn the same. I had one young man who was a senior in high school, and he never learned how to read. And this was before I had the Wilson reading program that I could help him with. But what I did do for him is I acted as his secretary to write some things that because he was a wonderful storyteller, and he was a wonderful, you could have really deep discussions about him for the books that we read. We were reading Tuesdays with Maury, and we had some very deep discussions about what that meant. And a very, very intelligent young man, but he never learned how to read. And so the way that I had to teach him was different than the way that I needed to teach the girl who could read anything but had no clue as to what she was reading. She had no comprehension skills at all. And so, and it's not just students with special needs. We're talking about, all students. They have a particular way that they learn well, and they should develop that way. But they also need to develop some skills in ways that they don't learn so well. And so that's what my program does, where you teach students to be their own best teacher. They can learn to step out of their box and add to what they do well, because they know the tricks behind it. And of course, the word that is used a lot here is Common Core, but it's more than Common Core. The problems with Common Core, it's the problem with what we are working for as an education system. Are we constantly worried about money? Are we constantly worried about losing our power? Are we constantly worried about whether we have good scores on the tests that we're taking? That's not what this is all about. What education is all about is the student learning at their best and top opportunity to learn, and teaching them how to take advantage of those opportunities to learn, whether it's in the school, whether it's at home, whether it's in the activities that they're involved in. I just spent yesterday and the day before with two of my grandchildren traveled with me, and then two of my children and their children were up there too at this family reunion, and it amazed me, you know, even in those little moments as we were driving along, how much they were learning. My grandson picked up a little magazine that talked about a city in the state where we were going, and he was reading it by the light of the Garmin because it had turned light. But as we were going along, he was telling me all these things about what was going on in the world around him. And you know, that's the kind of learning that we want to see. We want them to be learning constantly about the world around them and how we can make it better. And you don't get that from a government mandated education system. You get that from a system that teaches children how to learn in the home, that teaches children how to learn in the school. And then they can learn anywhere, in any place. And you cannot get that from Common Core. You cannot get that from even Utah Core, because it doesn't have that element to it. It's only there if the teacher puts it in there. It's only there if the parent puts it in there. And we need to have all of our students with those kind of opportunities, with that kind of mission, with that kind of purpose, to have students who are their own best teacher. We've kind of gone over that before. Let's take a look at okay, some of these I've just started, and let's kind of take a look at this one. I don't have this one completely done, but at least it started. And by the way, you're going to find that my website is not the typical candidate website. I wanted it to be something where you can get quick ideas, and so you know, there will be some bulleted lists and things like that. But the main thing is that we can have conversations here about different issues. And I want you to know I'm a real person. I'm not a packaged deal. I am a real person with real opinions, and I care about the world around me, and I care about you. And so that's kind of, when you get into the issues, I want to show that I have that kind of conversation with you. And I hope you will have that kind of conversation with me as well. Now, I grew up on a dairy farm in Idaho. And I had wonderful parents. They were definitely my first teacher, but they have continued to be my teacher even after their death. They're both deceased, and I can still feel them. I can still remember how they handled things. I did have some very wonderful teachers, but they are always in everything I do and everything I get involved in, because they were such wonderful people and so involved in the world around us. And of course, that included nature. We would go out into the countryside, and I'd look on my dad's face, and it just glowed with wonder. He was a very intelligent man, and he decided that he didn't want to raise his family anyplace else than on a farm where he was raised. He had the intelligence that he could have been quite a chemist. He skipped grades, and he had a very intelligent, very high intelligent quotient and that sort of thing. But he, because of the age that he lived in, other things were kind of involved in pulling him away from getting much of an education. He did have some college education, although he didn't officially graduate from high school because he had to go and help his father with the farm. But he did go to college and was very successful there. But as he thought about what he wanted for his family, he decided that he wanted to raise them on a farm so that they could learn how to work, and so that they could work together with him. I think working with your children or your parents, grandparents, whatever, is a unique experience. And he wanted to make sure that his family had the kind of morals and love for life and love for each other that he grew up with. And so he kind of sacrificed that educational educational merits, I guess, and put it into the farm life. But he was probably the smartest farmer I knew. I know a lot of our neighbors would come to him to get advice, and I remember one of my neighbors saying that his father had told him, "You watch Ken hacking, and he will. You do things when he does stuff, and you won't fail." And that was true. He knew how to look at the different sciences of the world and put them into good use. So he was a good example to other farmers. He was secretary of the irrigation district for the area where we lived. And there were some problems. It was along the Snake River, and there were problems every year with flooding, and they would try to build up the head gate, and everything they tried, it would wash out, because the Snake River has quite a
what's the thing you put in?
It has quite a okay, just a minute. I've got to pause. Got to help my husband here for a minute.
So what am I waiting for here? The plug or what?